What was the best you have no power here moment you have ever seen? When I was in high school, I worked at Popular Warehouse Club selling computers on the weekends. I was hired by the store manager via referral of a friend. I loved computers and they thought I'd make a good salesman, so my job was to stay in the computer department and sell computers, nothing else. Well, one of the shift managers didn't like that, and insisted that I needed to go fold clothes for a while. As in, half my damn shift. I told him that the store manager had instructed me never to leave the technology department, but he insisted. This went on for several weeks. The store manager showed up one weekend when both the power trip and shift manager and I were working. The store manager walks up with the shift manager close behind. Store manager slaps a stack of green bar paper, this was a while ago, down onto a shelf and points to some highlighted numbers. He looks at the shift manager and says, "Do you see this? This is our average technology sales numbers for the weeks you are on shift. See this number over here? This is our average technology sales numbers for weeks you are not. At this point, it would be more cost effective for me to simply fire you. What do you think of that solution?" The guy stammers and stutters like a toddler caught bullying another kid on the playground. Fortunately, the dude wasn't fired, but the store manager made it clear that when I was on shift, I was not to leave the technology department unless I was on break or there was a fire in the store. That shift manager never said another word to me. Next story. One of my jobs is in a hotel/restaurant/bar. A guest came into the bar after having been refused service at our sister hotel down the road. He was very drunk and had been rude, abusive and threatening to the staff. He insisted we serve him as he was a guest, but we'd already been phoned by our sister hotel so they could let us know what the situation was. We refused, but offered him some water and suggested he go up to his room. He then went on about how he had nearly bought our hotel and that he was practically our boss so we should serve him or he'd have us fired. We refused. He told us he was a very rich man and would tip us hundreds of pounds if we served him. We refused. He was getting abusive at this point, so we again suggested he have some water and head up to his room. He went on to tell us that his brother was the mayor so we should serve him. We refused and told him he should go on up to his room yet again. He then said he was going to the pub across the street, but all the pubs/restaurants in our town have a barred from them all policy. We telephoned the other pubs to inform them of the situation. Many of them got back to us and said they had been offered money, been threatened with losing their jobs and also told the story of the mayor. All of the pubs stuck to their guns and refused to serve him. Eventually, he came back to the hotel and went to his room. Next story. When my crappy father kicked me out of the house and then demanded he have access to my bank to control my financial situation, and I got to tell him, "You have no control over me anymore. You set me free when you kicked me out and now you can't do crap." Next story. My job right before my current one. Property manager, the owner was an absolute prick. He was heartless and rude and racist and I loathed him. I hated every day going into that job, but I needed the money. I was applying daily to my dream company in hopes that eventually I'd be accepted. In the meantime, every time I complained or mentioned something to my supervisor, I was told to shut up and get on with it. He was paying me too much to have opinions. 3 years after, we were a small office and the receptionist and assistant prop managers had quit. I finally got accepted into my dream company and happily put in my 2-week notice. In desperation, he offered me more money, a higher position, better benefits, which were laughable. When I said no, he asked why. I have never felt more gleeful than the moment of when I said, "I don't know, I'm not paid to have opinions here." That was a year ago and even now the look on his stupid old face gives me joy to this day. Next story. New director. Decides admin should hold a meeting at noon MF in the nurses' lunchroom and bar them from entering during that time. Defines it in a group text as a quick win. My response, "Please help me to understand how this is beneficial to remove the nurses from their lunchroom during lunch break?" No response, his peers and higher-ups in on the text. He is then moved to the quality department. Screwed up in so many levels. Next story. My parents were yelling at me and then my grandpa walks over and tells them both to sit the F down. They both shut the F up and sit their butt down on the couch. It was by far the most powerful thing I've ever seen him do. Lamau. Next story. When my manager at McDonald's gets into fights with all the aggressive/toxic customers and booting them out the store by calling them all security if they refuse to leave. Next story. A few years ago I interviewed for a job, in the US, that was labeled as a senior level position, which is my level of experience in this field. I go through 2 phone interviews and a stellar in-person interview. Shortly after the in-person interview, they call me and say they absolutely loved me and that I would be a great fit at the company. However, they thought I was a little too green, implying I was inexperienced, for the senior level position, but lucky for me they have an opening for the junior level position, at a salary decrease. I kindly told them that the reason I applied to their job posting in the first place was because it was a senior level position and that I wasn't going to take a step backwards in my career by taking a junior level position since I had both the appropriate experience and the work history. I also let them know that trying to trick someone with senior level experience into taking a junior level position by stringing them along through interviews and a job offer was deceptive and unethical. There was silence over the phone for a moment and then the interviewer said in an offended tone, "Well, we've all had to make sacrifices for company name." To which I replied, "You may have had to, but I don't make sacrifices for anyone." Stunned silence. Then the interviewer, who was so appalled that they didn't know what to say, replies, "Well, maybe you can think about it and I'll call you tomorrow to check in." I said, "No, thank you and please don't call me," and hung up the phone. They do this a lot to young females, people like myself in a variety of industries. Don't take crap from anybody. Know your qualifications, believe in them, and tell abusers buttholes to F right off. Your talents will be appreciated and paid for elsewhere, I promise you. Edit 1, the industry I am in is marketing and I am currently a senior graphic designer. Edit 2, it wasn't my intention to imply that this only happens to females. That being said, my perspective is that of a young female in the corporate world and it isn't always easy to discern discrimination against my perceived age and discrimination against my sex. Edit 3, since some of you seem to have a problem with me calling abusive people abusers, I have changed my wording to buttholes, which they also are. Next story. I used to work at a few subways. Thing is, the owner inherited them when she already had a busy and lucrative career elsewhere. She mainly held on to them to employ immigrant family members, I think. One time, she was in the back when she heard me interact with an angry customer. Afterward, she came out and said, "You know, you don't have to take crap like that. I trust you, you can use your judgment and just toss anybody out who talks to you like that." After that I wouldn't take any crap from anybody. Slightest hint of backtalk to your sandwich artist, and you were out on your butt, still hungry. It was so much fun. Let me speak to your manager. No. Get out. I'm going to call and complain. Oh, I'm terrified. Go nuts, but you can't call from in here, because you're trespassing now. The sheer indignance of an entitled customer when you don't bow and scrape before them is really something to behold. Next story. I have one that crosses with "I don't work here lady" a bit. I have a job, but I will still do interviews every couple of years. This means the script is flipped a bit. They have to convince me to work there. Anyway, I got the town early, so I stopped at a bakery to get something to eat. The woman went in the back to get it, and this squat toad of a woman walks in, yells at me to get her order and then yells at me again for not getting up right away to serve her. When I point out that I do not in fact work there, she goes off me about how important she is, etc. We can skip the play-by-play. I go the interview. Head of IT and the toad woman walks in. She has this evil grin on her face. I stop everything. I point at the toad woman and I say something like, "I have seen how your management treats people, and I have no interest in working for you," and I take my resume out his hands and walk out. The look on her face was priceless. Oh, and he had walked in with a print of a resume, so I took his copy. Felt great to do.